You have access to a spirit, a strength that enlarges and empowers you. Even better, you don't need to wait for the next big movement. You can heal the world. It's time for governance by Grace. Welcome to Gracearchy with Jim Babka. Wow, man, we got some heavy lifting to do today. Brian Thompson. I didn't know the guy. He's a household name now. And his little adventure in the realm of leading probably the largest healthcare organization out there, healthcare insurer, I guess is we ought to say. Mm-hmm. Jim, it just reminds me of the Salem witch trials. And I wasn't around then, okay? But are we in an era now where it's okay to just sort of take people out if they don't agree with us or they get in our way?
Yeah, that's called vigilantism, right?
It sure is.
I think we have to address this. To me, right after this happened, I appeared on the Gary Nolan show as I do most Thursdays.
Right.
And this was this topic we addressed. And my take on it was the fact that within mere hours, 3-4 hours after this had occurred, as this news was spreading, that there was jubilation out there. There was Schadenfreude. There was the celebration of the demise of another. And the fact that this is happening from a very clinical sense, the fact that this is happening should tell us that something is systemically wrong. And people were being pretty clear in their social media commentary about it. And it wasn't just social media. It started to bleed over into the media itself. Like if you turned on YouTube, it started to be the case that some of the programs that maybe you tune into might have actually, and did over the next several days, engage in a degree of Schadenfreude. Like here is a man who had it coming. This is what I would call the Darwinian aspect. Darwinism is kind of a cold thing. It's based on death. Death has to occur. Extinction events have to occur. Yep. The survival of the fittest means that everything else didn't make it. And that there's kind of some kind of natural cause and effect relationship in the universe. Now, normally we're talking about the human respect side of that when we don't use coercion, violence, and theft, happiness, harmony, and prosperity can increase. But when those things are present, they will decrease. And there's this Darwinian thing. So he's CEO of United Healthcare's insurance division, and they put up a Facebook post mourning the loss of their leader and a family man. And there were 57,000 laughing emojis on it within, the next day or so. I mean, it just, people were celebrating this. So why, to me, the question that I wanted to start to ask Thursday and that I've been thinking about ever since that event happened was, why does vigilante justice occur? And I want to be clear, we're recording this on the Monday following the event. It takes a few days to produce and get all this out to you folks when we do a full show like this. So it's possible that events will continue to progress past where we are here. There may be things that we say that turn out not to be true. So let me state where I'm at the very beginning of this, if I may. And that is that it appears that this individual was assassinated, the victim of a hitman whose intention was to drive home the point that his company is immoral in how they handle healthcare claims.
You're using a strong word, immoral.
Immoral.
We can't, in any way say that the company was following the law.
We're going to. I promise. Okay. We're going to get into all of that because I don't think anybody understands what's happening here, and I'll explain why that's important.
But this immoral premise, this is important because for all the reasons, right? We have a right to health care, all that. We're going to get into that. But immorality is an interesting word to choose. Immoral that he was shot. It's not immoral that he was doing his job.
Well, we have such a thing as capital punishment, right?
We do.
Okay. And then if we didn't have a system of justice or you didn't believe the system of justice is working, the concept of vigilantism is that you take justice into your own hands. So the individual involved in the action, whether he was sent to do it or he was acting alone, which is probably the more likely possibility as we're sitting here in a veil of ignorance about what actually happened here. We have limited facts at this moment. The possibility where we're sitting is that he acted alone, more than likely, and was doing it on the basis of the immorality of the company that this man was leading. Brian Thompson.
Right.
Okay. And for what it's worth, this reverberated throughout the healthcare industry, the health insurance industry. CVS, which is another very major player, took its photos of all of its executive leaders off its website.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't necessarily going to solve their problem. There is a thing called Google. There's the Wayback Machine. There's a whole bunch, which is there's another subject we should get into one day. But there's a whole way of, somebody's determined that's not really going to slow down or stop them.
No, but, symbolic.
But it's a response. It may be a fear, like an awakening that Darwin's machine is in action.
Yes.
We've done something that's going to cause us to be prey, and we may go extinct. Now, almost everybody is going to miss what actually should happen here, and that's the second part of this. Because
this is where it gets interesting, right? The Girardian part, right?
Yeah, Rene Girard posited that there was a desire. Okay, so we did a whole episode about this, and we will put that episode link in the show notes, okay? Because we laid all of this out, and we're not going to spend an hour explaining the philosophy of Rene Girard, but I'm going to let me just say it really quick. Desires are caught from others. Okay, they're not internal to us necessarily. We imitate, and imitation is triangular. So a human imitates another person who has an object that they want. The object is one point, the other person's the second point, and then you yourself are the third point. Okay, and as two people move closer to an object where only one can have the object, rivalry increases. When the rivalry gets to a certain point, it starts to turn into war. The closer that the two get to the object or to each other, the more likely they are to start looking like each other. So one of the things that you see is is that people will start to cast aside certain principles about how to fight or how to resolve a dispute or whatever, and they will start to look more and more like the person they oppose, their enemy. Their actions, their behaviors will become increasingly justified because of the danger or severity of their enemy. And the only people that will see the similarity between these two, who will spend all of their time, if they are both aware, it's possible only the imitator is at rivalry, by the way. The closer they get to each other in that fight, they will become more like each other, and they won't see it. They will have justifications, and they'll be able to explain why they're different and justified in what they're doing.
Oh, sure.
But to the outside world, who are not involved in the immediate dispute, it is inherently obvious that, boy, you sure act an awful lot like your enemy. If the fight intensifies enough, if the pain is bad enough to all the onlookers, then they will seek out, the way that this gets mediated, Girard said, and this is what's important to today's discussion, is the scapegoat. Someone has to be held responsible. Something has to take on the responsibility, and they are literally sacrificed. And in their sacrifice, in their blood, in their death, peace can be achieved. Now,
for a time, right?
For a time, right. It is literally cathartic. So I want you to go back to 57,000 laughing emojis. This is catharsis. This is a sense that, we've done something about this problem,
right?
And so there's a thing in Girard where, in his philosophy, where the scapegoat is perceived as being the source of blame. They deserve what they have coming to them at that moment,
right? Whether or not that's true.
Well, there's a difference between being culpable, ultimately responsible, and being either innocent or only tangentially or somewhat responsible.
So this would be the difference between like a proceeding in trial that results in the conviction and a sentence versus vigilantism.
No, I'm kind of going more from the standpoint that Brian Thompson probably is the product of a set of laws, regulations, and other types of incentives.
Sure. Right. Okay.
That, like, Brian Thompson could have been 10 different people, hundreds.
Right. It could have been anybody.
People.
He could have been doing the job. The job.
He was doing the job that was, yes, it had been created out of circumstance, and he filled that job.
Yep.
So this is why we all there are a lot of us who recognize that, oh my gosh, this is a human being who had, kids right at the beginning of adulthood, right? Like, he's got a family, he's a normal dude. We can relate to him in all these other ways, but he's in a profession which may have victimized real human beings. And it's an incentive structure. So if you kill Brian Thompson, if he was ultimately or culpable for the entire thing, if you killed him, the problem would be solved.
Oh, sure. Well, no chance of that, right?
No. So he isn't really the source of the problem. And this is what we have to expose. He is a sacrifice that offers catharsis.
Right.
He is a scapegoat.
And
he has some degree of innocence in this matter, is what
other
I'm saying.
Other than 57,000 people feeling good about this publicly.
It was a lot more than that, more than likely.
Probably.
This was pretty widespread.
So other than that, what have we accomplished, really?
Not much. And I want to emphasize that he is a product of a system. So, am I invoking sympathy for the devil here? $34 million in contributions. And if we average it out over the years, roughly $1 million a year from this industry to federal politicians. There's only 536 of those races, and they're not even every year, right? There's only a third of the Senate. I didn't do the exact numbers. Third of the Senate running, and the president only runs every 4 years. So it's only a third of the Senate, whatever. But it averages out to about $1 million being spent on contributions a year. And then lobbying, they've spent a lot more. They're spending about $3.9 million per average per year. It's going to go up and down, but that's an average for you.
But wait. The ACA was supposed to stop all of this. It was to most
No. I'm so glad you brought this up. Because as we're going to talk about in a second, Obamacare basically was for the insurance industry, by the insurance industry. Okay. Let me break this down.
We had to pass it so we know what was in it.
Yeah. So where there's the political left is the side that elevates this issue, as we'll discuss going forward. They have a sense that this is the problem. Like, there were videos in the media explaining why this Schadenfreude could be justified. They weren't necessarily honoring it, although I did find one guy that was. But they were suggesting that these are evil corporations led by evil people. And corporations are the problem.
Yeah,
the United States government is also a corporation. It's a corporation in the limit. It is the maximized corporation. And it can do things that other corporations cannot do. So the problem here is that the left may have a sense of the problem, but they don't have any sense of the root of the problem. Ergo, they cannot get to the solution. So now that let's get into the sense of the problem, because there's actually a history on this. Let's go through it real quick. There's a Great Depression in the United States of America. Franklin Roosevelt's administration imposes wage and price controls. We are focused on the wage side. If wages are frozen, if wages are at a certain level, and even the government starts to dictate, okay, well, this is the acceptable wage for this job, and so on and so forth. The next step that happens is that companies still, even in a depression, have some need to employ staff and make things happen. How do you get people to come to work for you? The benefit, the reason that people get paid more is that companies are competing for the best talent or labor.
Oh, sure. They want the best people to help.
Right. So there are some positions that's not the case. And so the wage is very low. But as you start to increase in skill and showing up on time, doing your job and so forth, then what happens is people can begin to compete for you. Well, that's taken off the table with a wage control system.
With wage controls, you're just grateful to have a job of any kind. Because you're either not working or you're working for the minimum wage or whatever the government set wage.
But you're not going to change jobs.
You're not going to change jobs. No, there's no incentive.
There's no incentive. So companies still need to figure out how to get people. So what did they do? There was a product available at the time for catastrophic health insurance, right? It was called hospitalization. Your parents or your grandparents, depending how far back you go back, my grandfather did not call it health care. He never called it that. Not once.
Yeah, it was like catastrophic.
They called it hospitalization. That's what they called it. Because what it was about was you had an event that took you out of work. And you needed to have something that was going to help you with the medical bills and the fact that you weren't working. It was not about all the tests are going to run, all that stuff.
Just all the healthcare.
Right. That didn't exist. So after the Depression's over, in the 1950s, during the Eisenhower era, they said, oh, we noticed that an awful lot of companies have adopted health and this hospitalization program. They're offering this benefit. Wouldn't it be better if everyone had hospitalization? You know how we can incentivize that? We'll give them a tax credit to do that. So it became almost mandatory, and it became financially beneficial to the companies that they would do this. So everybody all of a sudden starts getting their insurance through their employer. Makes us different from all the rest of the world. This is not practiced anywhere else.
This is in the 50s, right?
This is so you start with wage and price controls in the 30s, and you come out and the government incentivizes to help. They're trying to help. They're trying to make sure everybody has this program, right? Their intentions are noble and good. Okay, well, what ends up happening? Well, everybody's got this program, and then there's an arms race in the insurance industry that goes on through the 70s. And in this arms race, the insurance industry starts offering more and more things that cover more and more stuff. And the best analogy I can give you is, let's say you have a car. Car's going to require maintenance. They got to the point where they were covering the oil changes in the car washes. Like every single thing you could think of that was healthcare related was getting thrown in the basket to make the packages more and more and more attractive.
Womb to the tomb, man.
Okay. This becomes a cost nightmare because everybody's using this system. There's no way to pay for it. They've got to figure out how to control this. So in the 1970s, the Democrats came up, Ted Kennedy, who was a leader in this, came up with the Health Maintenance Organization. This was a set plan. These plans still exist. Kaiser's one of them. By the way, Kaiser still pays out better than anybody. Somebody has a Kaiser plan, you know exactly where to go. You know exactly what service you're going to get. Okay. But HMOs were devised, and it was designed to come in and begin to impose cost control. This was a Democrat plan. By the 1990s, the Democrats wanted nothing to do with this. In fact, they were blaming the Republicans because this is how it works. On a social program, one side creates the program, then the other side comes to justify the program. They start to say, we need to keep this program. This program it's always been like this. It's at the end of the country if we get rid of this program. It happens again and again. We've talked about that before. So they start talking in the 1990s about healthcare reform. It takes them all the way to Barack Obama's second year in office, basically, to get it done. And this is where insurance triumphs. Insurance ends up getting in the room, and they end up dictating the terms of the agreement. They preserve the biggest players in the industry.
Sure. Yep.
So without going through all the little tiny steps, some of you, which you may have felt, like I lost my doctor, for example, even though I was told I wasn't going to lose it. And during this last year, I lost my healthcare. Full disclosure, it was with United Healthcare. I was with them through July of this year. I had them since 2007. United Healthcare's worth in this process in 2010, $35 billion. That's the market cap for the company. It's up to $450 billion. That's quite an increase in a relatively short amount of time.
Leadership's doing its job.
Right.
Great value for the shareholders, et cetera.
United Healthcare, the company that we're talking about here, was born out of the HMO era. It started in the late 70s. And what we're seeing now in the discussion that's taking place, there's in fact a graphic. We will put the Twitter link for this so you can see it in the show links. This particular graphic went viral. I saw it in programs that were on YouTube as well. And it basically shows that the company that was the very best at denials of claims was United Healthcare. About twice the industry average, according to this chart. Go to your doctor's office for just a second. So when I was a kid and I went to see the pediatrician, there was one woman out front who was managing the reception desk. I actually, as a kid, called her the nurse because she would come in and help the doctor with various things, take notes and whatnot. And my pediatrician would see me. 2 people employed in my pediatrician's office. This is the early 70s. Okay, folks, it wasn't always like this. For those of you who were born later, when you go to a doctor's office now, there may be a doctor or 2 or 10 or 15 in there. But however many doctors there are more staff surrounding the doctor. It's a multiplier. It's not one person kind of helping out. It's a lot of people. And they are spending their time dealing with the insurance industry. Now, a stunning thing comes out of this. Like your office consolidates. So it's in 2013, 14, I'm sitting there in my doctor's office, and I had picked out a practice bill that was a family practice. It was owned by a handful of doctors. I think there were 8 doctors that had co-owned this practice. So when you would go in there, I had an HSA. I would actually say, "Hey, I'm on an HSA. Can we keep this at what was that back then called an experience level? Can we keep this experience level as low as possible so that my bill would be lower?" And they were happy to honor it. But they got gobbled up here locally by the Cleveland Clinic, which is a major corporation. And all of them were. And I'm like, "What's going on? Why did you guys sell?" And he said, "We could not negotiate with the insurance companies. We needed to have the insurance companies are so big. We needed to be big enough on our side to push back." So doctors, have this reputation for being very wealthy, having lots of money in their practices. They could and did, because of their humanity, often help people at a lower rate or for free. All that was taken off the table. Every client that came in, not patient, client that came in,
right,
is now a billing unit.
Yep.
And they have a job and a duty to get a certain level of billing over the course of their day if they want to keep making money.
Sure. It's like any attorney or other services organization, professional services. You need a rainmaker.
Okay. Now, the doctors, without getting into too much detail about this either, because I'm not a profound expert on this subject, what has happened in the last few years as this progressed is that the ones that have held out, the smaller practices that are not connected to the very most giant, biggest chains, those practices are now starting to take out what are basically the equivalent of payday loans. Why do you get a payday loan? You got a bill that comes up. You're not going to get your check until Friday. It's Monday. You got to get the car fixed, right?
Cash flow.
So what ends up happening is if these claims get denied, they're not getting paid. If there's an appeals process that has to be gone through, they're dragging the company out. And in the drag, the doctor may need to take out a loan to kind of bridge through, to cover, continue to run the practice and do the things to do. Now, they're expecting to win in the long run, but they got to take out a loan to get through maybe the short run.
Yeah, okay? I'm a short run, no kidding. In California, it can take 9 months to get paid.
Now, this payday loan system is actually part of a company called Optum, which, full disclosure, I also use. Optum provides health savings accounts. That's why I use them. But you know what other business Optum is into right now?
I'd be scared to ask.
Capital loans to doctors' offices. They've come up with an euphemism to cover it up, but it is the payday bridge. So they can deny coverage, squeeze the doctor, and get the doctor to take out a loan unless the doctor wants to become an employee, a no longer an entrepreneur, no longer the true healthcare provider, but simply a cog in the giant machine at a major hospital system. A major hospital system.
Yeah.
This is what's happened. And United Healthcare has been integrating the full picture of this. I'm not going to lay out a map for it, but they have figured out that they can do this thing called integration, and they can take all these different parts, and they're the cause of the denial of these claims.
So they're the cause and the profitable opportunist who's making money off the cause that is under their control.
Yes. So
Forget
now
about anybody who wants healthcare.
Now let's get back to the people, because let's say you've got someone that's really sick and they're in the hospital, which is already a time of difficulty and trauma for a family. Those of you who have had older parents to care for have probably experienced something like this along the way. It is a very common experience, what I'm about to describe. They have specialized in denials. And in fact, there's a mantra. It's called delay, deny, defend. And Jay Feinman wrote a book about this. This is literally the title of a book. Now, the reason that we are now have somewhat greater reason as I sit here on the Monday following this assassination to believe that this was a hit motivated by this is that it has been reported in the New York Times and elsewhere that on the casings of the bullets, which were in a semi-auto expelled on the scene, engraved in them was a message. There were 3 shots fired: delay, deny, and depose. Deposition is a way to get at the truth or pre-organize a case, but it is also typically a strategy in the legal world The longer and the harder you can make the depositions and the fact finding that go on, the more expensive the case is to pursue. Ergo, even if you think you're going to win, you may not have the ability to fight because it's going to take too long and cost too much, and you're more than willing to settle quicker.
And in the case of healthcare, there are instances where you'd be dead.
Yes, but your debt won't be dead.
Your debt won't be dead. Yeah, your debt will outlive you.
So I think in a Darwinian sense, cause and effect, we can begin to see that there are real consequences to this behavior. It has always been the case that people willing to go to vigilantism, and terrorism, for example, is a form of vigilantism. The people that are willing to go to those lengths, we are blessed that they are few and far between. Very rarely will someone upend their entire life or even sacrifice themselves personally to go make the justice happen. That is so rare. And we are fortunate that it's so rare, but it allows companies like this to get away with this for long periods of time. And these companies exist on the limit because they're able to do this on the back of the government. So here's all this case that I just laid out about the integration of United Healthcare and how they are in all these areas and the vast consolidation of this industry, this insurance industry that has occurred. And the fact that your doctor, because of it, is no longer your doctor. They are part of a corporate conglomerate. The reason all of this has happened is the government. And the political left solution is, well, you know what we need to do about this? We need more government. If only we had more government. You know why this hasn't worked yet? We've kept escalating, but it's always been that we've never had enough government. So the very first thing that they're all describing, you can go on YouTube and find this with no trouble. The very first thing that they're all saying is antitrust regulation. If there's arbitrators in a slow-moving bureaucracy in Washington, D.C., why, these companies will be completely scared of that, won't they?
That'll really fix things.
No, they're going to buy the regulators too. They're going to make sure that they're appointing them, and they'll be in a ascent to heaven when those people leave. They'll go back to work in the insurance industry. They'll do quite well. The number of insurance companies that will be able to do that will continue to shrink until finally, the only solution will be that the government has to run the whole thing.
Yep.
Dial 1-800, sit on your butt for weeks to get to talk to somebody and get your problem solved.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay.
Which is already like that, by the way.
The root of this problem is third party. Let me say that again. The root of this problem is third party.
Explain what you mean, Jim.
Number one, you are not your doctor's customer. The insurance company is your doctor's customer. So you have an insurance company, and the insurance company deals with the doctor. And whether or not you're going to get certain types of treatment is going to be dictated by the terms of the insurance agreement. They will make an insurance check before they do what they do, and they will not tell you what the price is going to be for you until it's over.
Yep.
I'm going to go buy a home. How much is it going to be? Oh, you'll find out when we get to closing.
Yeah.
How does that work, right? I want to buy a car. You'll find out when you're in the finance office filling out the paperwork. I want to buy bread. Well, when you get to the checkout, we'll tell you.
Yeah, it's like buying gas. It could change all the time.
You have no idea what it's going to be. There's no advertisement of these prices. They can't, because they're all part of negotiated agreements, and they vary. And you just simply cannot know. And the doctor is trying to figure out how to game this insurance system. That's what all those people in that office are doing. They're trying to make sure the claims get processed. They're trying to make sure that the forms got filled out correctly, which, by the way, not filling out correctly is now a criminal offense.
What?
Oh yeah. That's what it's one of the things Obamacare did. It's got to be done just a certain way. There's a national coding system. It's extraordinary.
So these are doctors. These are medical records people who do this, right? This isn't the average.
No, it's medical records people. And what ends up happening is that's all added into the cost of your visit. And so they have to justify their existence too. And they've got to make sure that claims are getting paid so the doctor and them get paid. That's why all those people are sitting out there, because they're all working for the insurance company. Everybody, you go into the doctor's office, nobody's working for you. You are a unit through the insurance company. The insurance company is their real client, and the insurance company is working with all kinds of people that walk into that building every day. You are not your doctor's client. You are not his patient. You are a business unit, an asset to the insurance company. Okay? Second, you are not the insurance company's customer. Your employer picked that, and you work for your employer, and you get stuck with whatever plan he or she or they chose to buy. And are they buying a plan that's going to maximize your health? Probably not.
I mean, unless you work in Silicon Valley, right? Where
they're looking to, well, there are varying qualities of healthcare plans. There's no doubt about it. But what they're doing is they're looking at their costs. So they're not trying to figure out how to deliver necessarily. There are exceptions out there. There's some wonderful companies that are trying to do great things, but they're not necessarily trying to get you the best plan. But here's the point. You didn't buy the plan. Right. Yes, something came out of your check, and yes, you've got co-payments and deductibles and so forth, by the way, which are designed to keep you from gobbling up too much of it. They are there for a reason, because otherwise people will run to the doctor for a sniffle, right? So to put some kind of price mechanism back into place and keep some balance between supply and demand, we have deductibles and co-payments. But at the end of the day, you are not the insurance company's customer. So you are a degree removed in both cases, and you will not be served. When you have a problem, the insurance company is the hub of this whole thing.
Yep. I'm in a couple of those right now, like just on personal stuff, just silly stuff.
Okay, I'm going to tell you something. People hate when this is pointed out, when they believe in this big government idea, when they believe in the insurance companies. They hate when this is pointed out. You can get almost every single thing done to your dog or your cat that you can get done to you far cheaper. There's even a thing called medical tourism where you can go to other countries and get the same things done.
Oh, sure.
In fact, the flight, the airfare, and the hotel for recuperating and being present in the other country to get it done may sometimes be less. That's why it happens. If you go and do this, there are people who live in Southern California that drive across the border down into Mexico to get their dentistry done.
I can name a bunch of them, right? And people who go there to have hips replaced, like major stuff.
Yes.
And whole communities like Nogales, Arizona, that are set up on the border so that healthcare tourists have nice hotels to stay at, and they can walk across the border, and it works really well.
So we have had a problem preceding the HMO era in the 1970s, where American medical care costs far more than it costs anywhere else in the world. And this is a huge growth industry, and everyone seems to need it and pass through it and pays maximum dollar for it. And the good news about the fact that you are paying so much for healthcare is that there's more medical innovation here in the United States of America than anywhere else in the world.
How does that happen? Does the money actually get to somewhere where it works?
Oh, no, we're on the cutting edge of everything because there's so much money passing through this system. Okay, we are. But that's where it ends. You are literally the world's guinea pigs, because it gets everywhere else too, very shortly thereafter. This is why people don't necessarily want to travel for health care, because they suspect that they won't get quite the level of quality care that they might get here, or they might not get the very, very, very cutting edge of something. We have more imaging machines at one juncture than anyone than multiple nations combined on the planet, right? Yeah. So they're going to send you to the high-tech stuff. The high-tech stuff is highly billable. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
So that's the only advantage that we've got out of this entire thing. And someone may come in and write to me and try to correct me if I'm wrong. Feel free to do. How do we get to this point? Why is it that we have this national debate right now? We have it because there are people that will say something that sounds noble and full of esteem. You know what it is, right?
Oh, yeah. Healthcare is a human right.
It's not. It's not. So rights are things that you can do. If you can provide yourself healthcare, or you can pay for your own healthcare, then yeah, you've got as much right to it as everybody else. But the idea that it should be given to you in your station, that you're owed it as a result of being a human being, can only be sustained if we are willing to enslave somebody. So to get your right, someone else has to lose theirs. And you say, whoa, wait a minute. No, that's not possible. I'm not, all these doctors are getting paid, all these insurance people are getting paid, everybody in the process is getting paid, but where is the money coming from? Oh, we pay for it in taxes. I don't want you to lose sight of an important fact we just covered a moment ago. Because of the fact we've got all those people working for the insurance company, our rates are a lot higher. And because so many people are using this system, because it's quote unquote free, the expense is so much higher. It is nowhere near as high in other places on the planet that don't have this same system, and it's a lot less where educated choices are being made about, let's say, your pet. These procedures could be less costly. LASIK surgery is not normally covered by insurance. It has gotten better. It's like a Moore's Law type of thing. It has gotten better over time, significantly, and it has cost less. Recovery times are better. The error rate is vastly improved, which is a big deal with eyes, right? All of this stuff, it has gotten much better, and it has gotten far less expensive than it was when it was first introduced. And that should be the trend for every technology in the world if it weren't for government policy, inflation being the biggest one. We're constantly printing new dollars. But the other thing that should be happening here is that think about your computer. Your computer does far more. You carry around a little phone, right? I got my phone here. They can do more than what they were able to do in a NASA rocket. And costs far less. Even if it is expensive, costs far less. So that should be the trend with everything, but it doesn't happen in healthcare. It doesn't happen in healthcare because someone's been enslaved. Someone is still getting stuck footing the bill, and it's the American taxpayer that's overpaying for the entire system. Our compassion is far more expensive than a system that would be far more just, where you actually paid for things. So the illusion of free, that's a temporary thing. And the only way that they've been able to keep it is to hide it in the violence of government, right? And free inevitably leads somewhere. You know where it goes?
2 letters, BK.
It's rationing. Rationing. The Republicans, freaking hypocrites, the Republicans, during the Obamacare debate, talked about death panels. If your family's being denied by a private insurance company, do you care whether it was the government or the private insurance company that's denying the coverage? Do you care? The death panels are here. And that is why something like this could happen. And why, more importantly, there's schadenfreude when it does.
Sure.
People are angry. Canada, who's one step ahead of us in this whole process, they did socialize. This is the next stage that everybody's on the left is calling for. Now offers assisted suicide. And it's not just offered for terminally ill. And there's counseling. We have testimony starting to come out of the country of testimony from individuals who could not afford to pay their medical bills, where they were told by someone, maybe you're not worth it.
Yep.
When you make something free, the supply-demand thing goes completely caterwaul, and demand shoots way beyond what the supply is.
Yeah, we haven't seen anything yet. Just, just wait.
And when the government is funding everything, the civic muscles, the social community muscles atrophy, and people are not engaged in trying to make sure that there's real compassion for those who are truly in need. That diminishes. Doesn't go away, but it does diminish. And it would have to, because A, you think it's being taken care of, you're paying for all of this, and B, we're all broke. We're all spending far too much money on government, which in turn is spending far too much money on healthcare. It's our largest expenditure at the federal government level. Insurance, Bill, is for catastrophes. Something bad and unexpected happen, and the ability to recover it from it will take too long. It'll be too delayed and too hard. You need to get back to life.
In the notes, I was reading through them for this show. This is an excellent point, that insurance was never about caring for you cradle to the grave. It's completely incentivized in other ways. If you want cradle to the grave healthcare, and you turn to an insurer, immediately you've turned to the wrong place.
Yes.
So how do we remove insurance from healthcare while still maintaining the quality?
So
government regulation?
Yeah, I'm a libertarian, and the first time somebody hears regulation, they think, well, regulation is bad. That's the wrong reaction. Government regulation may be consistently bad, but regulation exists everywhere. There's rules everywhere you go. There's rules of the road, and this is how we're going to get things done. And it's those rules that help actually streamline and set expectations on all sides for how to get something accomplished. So regulation is not a necessarily bad thing. Regulation can be a very good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I regulate the speed at which I drive because I don't want other people to be killed by my reckless driving.
Right. So there is a surprising way we can voluntarily regulate any and all insurance companies. If we first of all recognize that the insurance company is the customer, we're not, then we can recognize that they're already availing themselves of this very same solution I'm about to give you. The doctors' offices were smart enough, the doctors themselves were smart enough that in this environment, they sold their practices and joined these large conglomerate chains so that they could compete and fight back against the insurance companies, right? They can go from being small and being able to be picked on by the insurance company to being able to stand up and be even with the company, maybe even a little bit more, right? And they can negotiate their rates.
Right.
This opportunity is available to everyone. And in a completely free market, if the government wasn't regulating this, it might even be that the insurance companies needed to tell you that there were companies out there that were designed to insure and protect your rights in these transactions. They're designed to help maximize your claims. There could be a union of customers so that there would be some competitive pushback. Voluntary, if we didn't have the state, if we weren't always waiting for the state to protect us, maybe we could compete with the insurance companies with our own voluntary unions.
So I've seen some of this happening where specialty organizations like churches get together and purchase group insurance policies for their members.
And there are even methods, and I'm not completely familiar with all of them, full disclosure, where you don't even need to do that.
Oh, yeah.
But what they'll do, the Amish have a version of this, and other people have duplicated it, where there's a pot, and you basically say, I'm going to follow certain rules in my life. I don't drink, I don't smoke. Like there'll be certain restrictions that you've agreed to accept.
Yep.
And you'll live a certain lifestyle a certain way so that you minimize your use of the system. And if you end up in a situation where your use of the system is going to be at a certain level, a major level, they will show up and pay the bill.
Yep.
So the Amish don't run to the hospital for every nick and bruise, every sniffle. They do not. But if somebody needs that service, elders will show up and they will pay the bill in cash on the spot.
Yep.
And by the way, they'll negotiate it too. They'll say, you're not going to get paid at all unless we can get this to this level. Right? And then it's settled. There's ways that if we went back, in fact, there's this myth that that people were dying in the streets before all of these companies.
Before Obamacare, no.
Or even before the 1930s when people were acquiring hospitalization. Most people belong to a social organization. You mentioned churches. That was the number one thing. And churches even built hospitals. Those of us
That's why I went there.
know that the hospital that's at the corner used to be called St. Luke's or St. whatever. It used to be. Now it's, the name of the corporation on the front, but it used to be St. whatever. And we know this because they built the hospitals too. So you had the church unit, but you also had things like the Lions Club and the JCs and all the rest. People belonged to community organizations where part of their membership was looking out for each other, and part of the activities were fundraisers and different things, kind of the equivalent of a barn raising that went on within communities to make sure that somebody was taken care of. And it was potluck and it was ad hoc, but it was far, far, far less expensive. And doctors would often participate in this. They would say, hey, I'm going to give some free hours to help this out, or I'm going to reduce the price of the surgery. That's going to be my contribution to this whole thing. There would be ways that all this would get done. The price that we pay because we've decided that the government's going to help us with this. It could be vastly less. Those corporate profits that are being garnered by denying claims, You remember where I said you're not the customer of the insurance company?
Yes. Yes.
So they can deny your claim. And what are you going to do? Like in any other product, if you don't like it, you stop buying it and you tell your friends to stop buying it. I want you to tell me the last time you had a conversation with a friend where they said, don't buy United Healthcare or don't buy Aetna or don't buy whatever. Just name the time that it happened. It doesn't happen. Nobody has that discussion because they don't buy their health insurance. It comes from their employer. It's not their decision. So they think, well, I need some politician to protect me because it's not my decision. No, it should entirely be your decision. And if people were paying for the majority of their health costs, they would economize. They would find ways to ask questions. They would do some research and homework. They would avail themselves of services that would spring up all over the place that would be more than happy to help them navigate this system. They would find ways to keep all their medical costs relatively low. And when they hit that danger threshold where the event happens that is very difficult from which to recover financially, not just medically, but financially, they would have hospitalization there at that point. The role of insurance in our lives would be small and the cost of our services would be lower. And when you called your doctor's office, you'd actually maybe even be able to talk to the doctor. When my father, I've brought this up before, when my father was dying, the doctor would show up before visiting hours in the morning. He'd be at the golf course by the time I was, or maybe back in his practice, by the time that the pain in the ass family members showed up to ask questions. Come in, shake my dad's toe and say, how you doing? And my father would wake up kind of groggy. Oh, okay, I guess. And they would stand out in the hall. They used to have these tables. Now they do tablets, but they had these tables that folded out of the walls and fill out all the charts and forms. He spent more time standing there than he did even examining my dad, let alone talking to him. And nobody was there to ask any questions. So now you got to sit and hold, and you got to make way for a call back and all the rest of it. This isn't how things used to be. I am only 56 years old as I'm talking to you here. I had a doctor make a house call on me when I was 2 years old. They don't happen anymore. That never happens. And I didn't grow up in the country. I grew up in a suburban home. It was a city doctor that came in to see. This is not what should be happening. It's because we're not the customer. So can we close with one more piece of Gerard?
Sure. Yeah.
There has been some discussion, and it's even been disturbingly to me in libertarian quarters of justifying this death, that somehow or other violence will cure the system, that vigilantism is actually good. And in this process, Bill, I am convinced, everybody will be surprised to hear me say this, that we're overlooking grace. Justice is not about punishment and retribution. That's not what it's about. There's nothing that's changed. There's nothing about our system that's been solved or addressed, regardless of the catharsis we feel by the killing of Brian Thompson. Nothing. It's still the same system. Everything will still keep going. The profit will keep going. And some people might say, well, then we're going to have to kill a few more of them. No. Grace is about restitution and restoration. The way that justice works in a grace-based system is restitution and restoration. Restitution to make the victim as whole as possible. And let's be honest, the people that are getting their claims denied and have nowhere else to go are victims. They've been sold fraudulently a shoddy product. They haven't been sold, their employer was, and nobody's there to represent them at that moment. They're alone. And restoration is about restoring relationship, putting people back together again. But the Gerardian problem that overarches all of this is that sacrifice is a superstition. Somehow or other, things are a little better by the death of someone. And that death makes everything a little bit better. But it doesn't. And what we need to do is break free from that. And the reason that I spent all the time walking through how our insurance system doesn't work, because it's tied to the state, because it uses force to achieve its goals. That's what the state does, is to begin to analyze this scientifically so that instead of getting angry, we get smart. Instead of using rage and seeking catharsis and violence, we actually begin to become intelligent and analyze a root problem. The way forward will not involve more government. The way forward won't involve antitrust. The way forward won't involve more killings. It won't involve the state taking full control of healthcare. The best possible outcome is a system where everyone is free to buy the service they want and need, and the rest of us are so freed, both by the reduced burden of the expense of this system and the amount that we have to pay for it in taxes, where we could begin to exercise and recognize our responsibility to our neighbor and move and act to them. And that will bring about the ultimate restoration, coming together and healing, not just physically, but communally.